I know what you're trying to figure out when you're scrolling past a dozen ultra-fast workstations. You need a computer that just works, that stays cool in the office, that won't make you stare at a loading screen while you're on a deadline. And that feels like a solid investment instead of a flashy billboard. If you've been weighing the cost of a high-end desktop against the risk of buying something that sounds amazing on paper but ends up being a headache, you're not alone. Most people in this space have already burned through a few machines that either lagged under heavy multitasking or turned out to be noisy enough to drown out a conference call. That's why I'm looking at the HP Pro Business Desktop with a 16-core Intel Core i9, 64 GB of RAM, and a 4 TB PCIe SSD. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's ditch the spec sheet for a minute and talk about what this kind of setup actually does for a typical professional day. Imagine you're a video editor juggling 4K timelines, a data analyst running large SQL queries, and a remote team manager hopping between Zoom, Teams, and a web-based CRM. In those scenarios, the biggest bottleneck is usually not the raw clock speed but the ability of the system to keep all those workloads fed with data without resorting to swapping to a hard drive or throttling the CPU because of heat. The 4 TB PCIe SSD in this HP model gives you a massive amount of fast storage, meaning you can keep multiple project files, large datasets, and virtual machines open simultaneously without the dreaded "disk is busy" message. In practice, I've seen users with similar configurations load a 25-minute 4K video, apply color grading, and export while still having a spreadsheet of live market data updating in the background, all without a hitch. Now, who should consider this machine? If you're a small to mid-size business that needs a reliable workhorse for creative professionals, engineers, or any role that thrives on parallel processing, the combination of a 16-core i9 and 64 GB of DDR4 memory creates a level of headroom that most mainstream laptops simply can't match. The ultra-quiet design is also a win for open-plan offices where a whirring fan can become a distraction. HP's thermal engineering keeps the chassis at a low-noise floor even under sustained load, something you'll notice right away if you've ever worked next to a tower that sounded like a small turbine. On the flip side, if your day-to-day is mostly email, document editing, and occasional web browsing, this is overkill. You'll be paying a premium for capacity you'll never tap, and the extra power draw could even bump up your electricity bill a notch. Also, because the machine is built around a desktop form factor, it isn't meant to be moved around the office regularly. You'll need a dedicated desk space, a reliable power outlet, and probably a UPS if you want to protect those 4 TB of data from a sudden outage. For freelancers who travel between co-working spaces, a high-end laptop would be a cleaner solution. Let's dig into the practical strengths that set this HP apart from other business desktops on the market. The first thing people notice is the seamless connectivity. HP includes a suite of ports that cover everything from legacy USB-A to Thunderbolt 4, plus HDMI 2.1 for driving a 4K monitor at 144 Hz. In a real-world office, that means you can hook up a dual-monitor setup, plug in an external SSD for backup, and still have a USB-C dock for your smartphone without needing a separate hub. The inclusion of Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.2 means you're future-proofed for high-bandwidth wireless devices, which is a subtle but important benefit when you're transferring large video files between a laptop and the desktop over the network. Another practical win is the pre-installed Windows 11 Pro. It isn't just a marketing label. The Pro Edition provides BitLocker encryption and group policy management that many IT departments require. The OS also comes with a suite of productivity shortcuts that make switching between virtual desktops and managing multiple apps smoother. For businesses that need to enforce security standards, the fact that the OS is ready to go saves time on configuration. From a storage perspective, the 4 TB PCIe SSD isn't just a large number on a spec sheet, it translates into real flexibility. You can allocate a 2 TB partition for your active projects, a separate 1 TB volume for backups, and still leave room for a sandbox environment to test new software. Because the drive is NVMe, You'll see random read/write speeds that make loading massive datasets almost instantaneous, a big difference compared to a desktop with a SATA SSD or a traditional HDD where you'd feel a noticeable lag when switching between heavy applications. Now let's talk about the hidden trade-offs. The machine's power supply is sized for the high-end components, which is great for stability but also means the unit draws more wattage than a typical office desktop. If you're running a small office with a limited circuit capacity, you'll want to check the total load before plugging.